are listening to the most comprehensive paranormal archive on the internet.
Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm sharing experiences, true paranormal stories from the web. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. Support is never expected but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. And there are many ways to support the show. You can share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platforms. You can sign up for the Patreon feed and get all the extra content there, several episodes at this point, for as little as $1 a month. And you can also check out the merchandise store and get all kinds of shirts and some other items with designs made by friends of the show. Also, please follow friends of the show. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel and is the co-host of this show with me on Saturdays whenever she's able to make it. And also Ricky of the Anything Is Possible podcast. I usually join him on Sundays for his shows. He usually does paranormal-themed shows on Sundays. And also Michael Strange, host of Trouble Minds Radio, which I call into quite often, and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows, as well as my own, online 24/7 for free. So I think that takes care of all of the introduction stuff. It's been a little while since I recorded one of these. I actually took a week off from recording the shorter shows, and so I'm always glad to get back to this when I have to take some time off. It's always good to get back to these things. So let's see here. Let me get to the file and we'll get going here. So let's get my chair around a little bit here. It's always hard to find just the right position, unfortunately. Anyway, this first one says, I turned off the smart speaker app on my phone months ago. In the past couple of days, I have been discussing my deceased grandfather with my mother via text. Tonight, when I was sitting in my living room, my phone randomly lit up and said, I am proud of you. It was sitting across the room when it did this, and no noise was being made when it happened. I wasn't near it or touching it. It literally brought tears to my eyes, as I feel it was my grandfather speaking to me. Has anyone else had anything like this happen? And that's where that one ends. It's a short one, but it's a wild one in that, and it goes back to the show that that was recorded last Saturday as I'm recording this. Now, this is going to come out a little while from when I'm actually recording it, but still, if you look at episode 975, I actually remember that because it was so recent. That's where Jen and I talk all about electronics and the paranormal, and the way that it seems as though even doesn't matter what kind of device it is, whether it's old-fashioned phones or computers or radios, and now newer phones, smartphones, computer phones, basically, these anomalous things still happen. And I really am curious about the nature of the voice, if it sounded like the grandfather or if it didn't. Either way, it's fascinating. And I'm just wondering about that as well. So, and I'm just looking here. It does say the phone lit up. So it was being used in some fashion. I don't know if it's hard to know if it was just being used for a battery, for energy to get those words put out, or if it was being put out through the speakers somehow of the phone. It's amazing to me now that with phones that are out there now, the quality overall, anyway, uh, of audio that can come from phones these days. I've been around people that have used them for listening to things or watching things here or there. Usually just clips, but the quality and the volume is really amazing to me. That the amount of sound they can put out when they're so thin overall. Um, and again, there's probably, I mean, I'm sure the technology can be explained as how that works. I just don't know it well enough to describe that. So it's amazing to me because of that. But yeah, so I'm just wondering about the nature of the voice. If it sounded like their grandfather, either way, that's a pretty specific thing to say. Not that it couldn't have been a recording of some kind that was accessed by the grandfather and played back. There's a lot of different ways I think this could have gone. Um, the device was just used as a battery, and the sound may not have come directly from the phone, but it may have come from right where the phone was at, making the person, and I guess anyone that's having the experience, possibly think it's coming from the phone. It could have been coming from the phone. It could have been someone using the speakers in the phone somehow to make their voice heard. It could have been, again, some kind of recording or some kind of auto-generated text-to-speech feature that was being used. There's a lot of possibilities, at least as far as I can think of anyway, as to how that voice could have been created. And that's the amazing thing about this interaction with technology to me is there's so many levels to it, especially with modern technology. And as was discussed in that episode 975, I think that's going to get more and more common as time goes on and technology advances, and there are more and more people who, let's say, eventually pass on, who are more familiar with the more recent types of technology. If that is even necessary, I don't even know for sure that it is. I'm just saying it's a possibility that that could influence or could cause even more of this kind of activity possibly to be happening throughout the future here. So moving on to the next one. This one says, "This is probably nothing, but I've noticed something weird in my house. I live alone in a rural spot, so it's quiet and empty most of the time. Over the past week, a couple of small things have moved, like a kitchen chair slightly angled differently, or a mug shifted a few inches. I double-checked, and I definitely left them in their original positions. I'm not sure if I'm losing my mind or if there's something, I'm sorry, or if there's something else going on. Has anyone experienced something like this?" And I can say, yes, many people have. And that's where that one ends. I can say many people have. It's not always like you see in Hollywood, things flying around, chairs stacking on top of tables, all that kind of stuff. That there are rare cases, it seems like, where that does happen. But many times it can just be a subtle movement. And I've had that around here at different times where I thought I had something in one spot and it was slightly off to one side or the other. And I don't know if that was anything paranormal or not here for sure, but I am sort of, because of my low vision, I keep things where I know where they're at. It's sort of everything looks like a terrible mess, and the dining room table is a terrible mess, but that's another story. Um, Everything else, though, looks like it's a mess, but I know where everything is at. And so it's not really a mess to me because I can basically find things without having to look for them too much visually and get them quickly. So, but chairs is a pretty major thing to be moved around, especially if you're alone. And again, I don't think I've had that happen here, but other smaller objects I have had happen, and it's usually objects like in the kitchen or in the bathroom where um, my cat Logan is not supposed to be without me being there with her. In the kitchen, she's not supposed to be there at all. So I've had a weird thing happen recently. So I used to think that, and this kind of just brought this up to me. Um, I've always joked or half joked that Logan, my cat, can teleport. I'm wondering now if it's not teleportation, if it's astral projection, or if it is, but if it is teleportation, then she has to be able to see where she's going. Because recently, a few different times, like over the last couple weeks, I've um, I've found that she was stuck in the bathroom, and I didn't see her go in there. Now that's not that big of a deal. She could have gone in there when I opened the door, and I didn't notice. But it doesn't. It's weird when I consider those couple of times where I literally was looking at her, and I turned around, and then she was in front of me again, and I never heard or saw her move from her position before I turned around. So I don't know what is really going on for sure, but she never used to do that. Like in all the years I had her here, when I went into the bathroom, if I left the door open for her to be in there, she would always come out when I came out. And so now I have to check every time just to make sure she's not stuck in there. But it's just weird because of those couple of times where it seemed like she teleported. But again, is it because she didn't teleport and it was more of just an astral projection? Or can she somehow, again, this is all, if I'm not expecting anyone to believe me here, just saying, based on my experiences, does she have to be able to see where she's going to get there? So, anyway, just a recent update on my own possible experiences where uh, I heard her and I couldn't find her and realized, oh, she was in the bathroom. So, anyway, a little update on my own continuing random, possibly paranormal events here in this apartment, which we'll be actually be getting to, and it'll probably be out before this comes out, so you'll already know about this. But for those listening live to the live recording, this coming weekend, the plan is I'm going to be on with Jen again, and I'm going to talk about my apartment and all the paranormal things that happen here. And it might be the first part of a two-parter, because there's that much from over the years. Cause I've been here almost 20 years now. So, anyway, moving on to the next true story here. Oh, and so I'm going to be sharing my experiences, and then Jen is going to be commenting on them and sharing her thoughts and asking questions. So that's the other part of why we're doing that. Anyway, moving on to the next one here, like I said. It says, my uncle passed away years ago from a heart attack. At the time, he was living far away from me with his girlfriend. After he passed, his body was brought back to our hometown. I went to the morgue to see him resting in his coffin, and a few days later, he was cremated. His ashes were then taken to a cemetery and placed beneath his stone plaque. Years later, I moved to another town with my girlfriend, where we have now lived for at least 15 years. About 2 years ago, I had my telescope set up at the window so I could look at the moon. We have 2 picture frames on the windowsill, and as I moved my head away from the telescope, I suddenly saw my uncle's face smiling at me in one of the frames. I felt an overwhelming sense of peace while I saw him. Then, just as quickly, his face vanished. So it made me wonder whether it's possible for spirits to travel. And that's where that one ends. And yeah, there's a big there's a lot of debate about whether or not spirits can move from where they passed, uh, based on all the accounts and experiences I've read about and heard about. It does seem like they can. Uh, so it's doesn't surprise me that that happened. But yeah, I'm looking at the chat here. Yeah, Eric, I've been here almost 20 years. I think it might even be 20 years now. I am terrible at keeping track of time that I've been in this apartment. But yep. And hello, Mike. Thank you. And but yeah, so it doesn't surprise me. I do wonder why at this one point in time, I'm wondering what else was happening. And it's none of my business, but just curious if there is anything else happening in that person's life when they were sort of in that room getting ready to use their telescope to look at the moon. I've heard one of the shows, and I'm hoping to have the host on here at some point. We're still working on a day and a time. But one of the shows I listen to, um, Where Did the Road Go? They talk about that a lot. The host, Soraya, and a lot of the people that come on the show for their panel or their group conversations, they talk about how they've noticed in their own experiences and others they've learned about. A lot of times things will happen when paranormal things will happen at sort of important points or uh, major events in the person's life. And I don't know, I do believe that happens, but I also don't know if that's happening with every paranormal experience. So it could be that there was nothing and it was just the uncle was just sort of wanted to say hello. But also I wonder about the possibility of, was there other stuff going on? And it was meant to be very comforting and maybe help this person just feel better at the time. So moving on to the next one here. This one says, having seen shadow people, shadow men, whatever you call them, I don't fully believe that they were at any point a human. In the hospital I worked at, which was 123 years old and was creepy as heck, I worked overnights. I've seen a few shadow people there. I've also seen one in my house I lived in with my sister. It was about the size of a toddler, standing on her bed. I also saw a head and shoulders at my friend's house, peering over the fence in the twilight as we jumped on his trampoline, more than a decade ago. And still, I have no idea what they are. Are they some kind of malevolent entity or lost entities wandering? And that's where that one ends. That's a lot of shadow people to see, shadow figures to see. The toddler-sized one, that's fascinating. I don't think I've heard of that very often. And when I've heard about it, it's been more of a case where all the person saw was this shorter shadow moving from place to place. And I've heard that associated more with the little folk than what you would think of as just shadow figures that don't do anything else. Not that what people are seeing aren't shadows, just that if you think about shadow figures or shadow people or anything like that, I think they're similar to orbs, similar to lights. I think there can be many causes for a shadow to appear. I don't know if they're all the same thing. I don't think they're all the same thing. I think some could be non-human entities taking on human shapes. I think some could be little folk, as I said, which can also, from what I've heard and read, shapeshift, so they could still appear to be large or not. And I think there could be human spirits that just appear because I've heard accounts of that, where people recognize the shape of a person that has passed, but all they see of this person is the shape, the shadow of this person. And maybe they get a sense that is that person. So, again, when it's just lights or just shadows, I think there can be many causes, many things appearing in the same or similar ways. As to who or what was seen there by the writer there, the person that made that post, all those times, I don't know. There's several different locations. So their home, their friend's home, the hospital where they worked. Hospitals, of course, they seem to be centers for paranormal activity, whether everyone notices it or not. That doesn't mean that it can't still be there and it can't still be happening behind the scenes. But super common to find accounts of people having experiences in medical facilities. I think at some point that's going to be one of our Saturday shows too, is just me finding a bunch of posts from people in the medical field and about their experiences there, and then Jen and I talking about those experiences. I think that's going to be a show at some point. So I have no idea when yet, though. That has not been planned as of yet. Let's see here. This next one is kind of long, so I don't think we're going to get to that one. But yeah, so hospitals, just doctors' offices, I've heard of in some cases, or even in places that were where people were treated, but then eventually they were turned into more or less just offices for medical staff, but they weren't. There was no treatment being done there. Nothing. No actual kind of medical work. It was more just for the office work, the paperwork side of everything. I've heard of those places still having activity in them. So also, it's always amazing to me when places change from one thing to another, and all the things that they have been, whether it's two or more places, are common sites for paranormal activity, like hospitals that were later turned into hotels. I've come across that before in doing these shows. Let me see here. Schools, just all kinds of places. Antique. There's one, I forget where it was at that I read about this. I think I shared it on a previous show way back when. There was a place, and I'm totally blanking on what place and what state in the U.S. here, but it was a sort of like a health spa, so almost like not quite an actual hospital, but said to provide medical sort of treatment through water and all that, mineral water, springs, all that kind of stuff. And then later it was turned into a antique mall. And then later I believe it was turned into a hotel. So you have all these different things here. And again, antiques, not saying that they're all haunted, but there's so many accounts of people having experiences with antiques and with items that are older. And sometimes it's a positive experience. It's a positive energy that is attached to the item. Other times, and not so much. Other times it's neutral. So it's always hard to tell. But I always sort of, whenever this comes up, I always suggest that it's fine if you like antiques. That's great. Just whenever you're going to places that have them, try to get a feel for the energy around the items that you're interested in before you buy it, just in case. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal.